This is the GPLPodcast, part of the Pull Tab Sports family.
A good recruiting tip is like, where can I get a good drink around here?
Oh boy. Jupe making mistakes. I love it.
And so I had to train for this marathon.
Make sure you stay awake for the game tomorrow, too.
Okay, we got to complete the saying question. Duck, duck.
Goose.
Oh!
It ain't gray duck, it's goose.
Gotcha. I didn't even know that. Yeah, blame it on Don.
Now, here's Jupiter and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL Podcast, episode number 272. Well, Vigs, here we are back again for another podcast and coming on a successful weekend in Madison.
Yeah, not the best start for a road trip for a Gopher team in Madison.
No.
Bob described Friday night as too much poking and hoping. In his very casual Austin verbiage, and it was difficult, I think, for a lot of fans to watch because they were expecting a little bit more with the Gophers going to see the Badgers, who have struggled mightily this year.
To say the least, they get down 2-0. But I gotta say, Vigs, in the past, well, let's say the past 3 to 7 years, down 2-0. We didn't see many comebacks in the past. We've seen a couple this year.
Yeah, and I think the special teams for this team really helped. You know, you get the 4-on-4 ice that kind of changes up the pace, and then you get the power play. And once again, there's a reason why so many people occupy Snuggerud's off-wing area is because when he gets a clear look, when there's puck movement across the zone, and he has time and space to shoot that puck, not a lot of goalies are going to get it in that situation. And a good confidence booster for him this weekend to get that. You know, he's cognizant that people are trying to take that away, that teams are loading up in that area, and they have to move him around. But once again, when he's in that most comfortable spot, he can deliver.
And, you know, that nice slap shot power play goal went right under the arm there, which is not easy. There's uniform, there's pads, there's a lot of stuff going on there. And he just powered it right through.
Yep. Good for him. I think he's pretty pleased with his weekend overall. Not probably so much on the forechecking game on Friday. You know, Bob talked a lot about the guys just kind of looping in and not being straight lines. And if you talk to Mason Nevers about the film session Saturday morning, he's like, it certainly didn't feel like we won. The way the coaches were talking to us, it did not feel like a winning video review the next day.
Maybe not. But one thing I've been really encouraged by, yes, Snuggerud got his lovely Ovechkin-esque goal in his spot. But we've been seeing him do so many other things. Assists this year are up for him. The type of goals he's scoring is up for him. So he follows up that power play goal with a wonderful just kind of tap in by a spectacular pass by Paulson in the third period to give Minnesota the eventual victory.
Yeah, you know, I think that's what Snuggerud came back for, was not just to be a one-dimensional player. You know, I think sometimes we are putting him under the microscope of, you know, what is he as a player? Is he a play driver? We know that he's a great offensive talent shooting the puck, and he's developing these other parts of his game. And I think they're not as comfortable for him to focus on. But I asked him, you know, what do you look at besides points and goals and wins? And he's like, I need to be a better forechecker. It's like, I need to be able to win pucks on the forecheck, straight lines, play through contact. I know that. I also need to be able to hold on to pucks a little bit more when it's a possession play. It's not a scoring play. It's a possession play. I've got to be tougher on the puck so I can buy time and space for my teammates to get open and then make that next play. So, he's saying the right things, and I think you're seeing it on the ice as well with him. We're pretty early in the year. I want to see that play against Michigan and Michigan State coming up. And it'll definitely get tested this weekend with Bemidji State too, because they are a big veteran old team.
And one thing we talked about a few weeks ago, might have been with Cappy or even Todd Molesky, most of Snuggerud's big games and points came against non-conference play, and that he didn't show up as much against conference play. Well, these first 2 weekends of conference play, I kind of like what I see. First part of the week
points.
this week.
Yeah, putting up the points.
Yeah.
And that's what they need him to do, especially now with the injuries that they're dealing with. He's probably going to get a little bit more ice time here the next couple of weeks instead of, the 15, 16, you might see him creep into that 18, 19.
So you mentioned the injury. More players going to be playing time. We heard this week, Falloon and Thomas not going to play this weekend. Not the greatest, but they're going to be back sooner rather than later, maybe the following weekend. But that second game, Paulson coming right up the ice. People are like, oh, that was at first people, was that a dirty hit? Was that a dirty hit? I think clean hit completely, Viggs. Just got him in the wrong spot at the wrong time. And it looks like he's going to be out until at least January now.
Yeah, Bob accidentally let slip on his radio show that it was going to be until the second half. And I clarified with him at availability this week. He's like, did I say that? Like, you did. He's like, got to catch myself when I'm on there with Wally. But he did confirm it. Feel bad for Paulson. It does feel like he's become more comfortable playing with the top players, like getting more scoring chances, figuring out ways to be part of the power play a little bit more. He's been good on draws. It's just an unfortunate injury, and no one's feeling sorry for the Gophers. Falloon is probably the closest of the injured guys to get back. I saw him skate a little bit this week, not with the team, but just kind of after on his own. So he's probably close. I think Thomas's lower body injury is kind of one of those ones where you just have to be cautious, because if you rush it too quickly, you'll have a setback. So we'll see there.
So kind of a Friday, Saturday thing. Friday, pretty much doubled up in face-off wins to losses. Saturday, much more balanced. Saturday, they came out much better. They're putting a lot of pressure on. I would say Wisconsin's goalie probably kept him in that game. But they're kind of hanging on to a 1-0 lead because they couldn't really score. The Badgers come right back, get 2 goals late in the second, and you're like, here we go again. But boy, like I've said before, us as a fan of the game, we used to be so worried when they get down, but they can come back, and they did it again Saturday night.
And I think they're coming back in the right fashion. They're not just being reckless and taking chances and flying guys out of the zone and looking to, be riverboat gamblers. They're getting goals out of their play, which is what you want to see. They're not forcing it. They're taking advantage of the opportunities that present themselves within the game. And that is going to happen. You just have to have players who can execute in those situations. And so far, Minnesota has those guys. I don't know if 5 to 10 years ago, if the Gophers would be winning as many of these close games as they have this year and 2 years ago. This program has kind of flipped a little bit on how they can handle these situations.
It definitely is. And so Gophers get it back. They get it tied 2-2. We go to overtime, Viggs, and I love this highlight, so I threw it on here. So let's take a look at Snuggerud and Zemer teaming up for the winning goal.
Under 2 minutes now in overtime. On the ice comes Snuggerud. He's got room underneath, and there's your goal! They've done it again, and the Gophers sweep the Badgers! This building is stunned!
The Badgers got caught in a change there, and it was Snuggerud who puts a nice feed in. Now the other end with just a poke there was Brody Zemer.
Knocks it right out of the air. That that was quite the play because I'm guessing Snuggerud, when he tries to float the pass on the backhand, and he's kind of like, oh geez, that's a bit too high. And when he literally just bats it in, Snuggerud's the one who goes, hits the ice and jumps right back up. He was so happy that Zemer was able to play that pass because it was 3.5 feet, 4 feet off the ice.
Yeah, Sungerud said Zemer's got a little bit of a lacrosse background. And so he's like, I wasn't worried. I had to get over that sliding D, however high it was going to be what it was going to be for Zemer, and he handled it. It's even funny, I guess, at the Saturday morning film, Moscow is very particular in telling his team no backhand passes tonight. No backhand passes unless you're Wayne Gretzky. So does that mean
not
Snuggie
Wayne?
is down?
Sorry.
Yeah, Snuggie, he's trying to get a new stratosphere player there.
Our SID Scott Slarks ended up catching a different angle of that video. I also threw that one on tonight because he's down there at the end of the game ready to grab somebody to put on the radio and stuff like that. Very involved. So he was recording from where the team enters and exits the ice. And this is what Slarksy got. There goes the band just playing it for nothing. So Slarksy, I noticed that one was retweeted a ton. So great capture by Scott Slarks of the University of Minnesota.
Yeah, good result for the team, battling through injuries, getting key points. We say what we say about Wisconsin, but they have a lot of talent on their roster, and it's hard to win on the road. And locking up 5 or 6 points is very important for Big Ten teams when they go on the road.
So I threw this out there Sunday morning. Is 5 or 6 points a sweep? I'm thinking myself more old school, that when you won in overtime back in the old days, you win, it's still a sweep because points were determined differently back then as well. I consider this a sweep. Well, the announcers considered it a sweep. Some people kind of fought back on it. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's 2 wins, and it's not a shootout win.
66% of a win.
Yeah. So I still think it's a sweep. You're just rewarding the other team for getting into the extra time for that point. But I think you can still comfortably call it a sweep. 5 or 6 points is pretty good when you're on the road.
And BTN Plus did an excellent job. I thought, they didn't always say the right things, but as we spoke with Todd last week, they're college kids, they're learning. I praised them for that call at the end of the game. And the funny thing is, the kid responded to me on Twitter and said, that was me, and we appreciate it. I'm like, you just keep doing what you're doing because you're learning, do different sports. You never know what can happen. You just got to keep doing it. So hopefully those guys calling the game keep calling and keep getting better, because that's what we want and that's what they want.
Well, and I think that's what we're going to see in the future with a lot of these BTN Plus. So you want these students to get better. Joe O'Donnell was one of those guys who started his radio career at college, showing up at the desk of the radio station saying, hey, I want to call hockey games when I'm here in Delaware. And they're like, all right, come on by and we'll get you set up. And that's how he got his start. 1,000 minor league games later, and now he's calling NHL games.
Somehow I knocked myself out of the thing here. Sorry about that.
I kept going like a pro.
Well, it's because you are.
It's like we don't have bad line changes like the Badgers in overtime.
Well, that was pretty bad. It was very odd, V's. I'm like, well, one thing that was significant at that overtime is Minnesota controlled it for the first 2 minutes at least. So it's 2 minutes, 2:15, 2:30. They controlled it for quite a while.
Yeah, and that's the key of overtime is possession. And, people say it can be exciting. It was really exciting when it first came, but now we've kind of coached a little of the fun out, and it's very much a, possession game in OT. And when you've got players like the Gophers in transition, it's a good spot for them usually. Just don't get to the shootout.
Well, maybe they'll surprise us this year. Maybe that's the one thing that all of a sudden they're going to be good at if they ever have it happen. So, knock on wood, Viggs. Who knows? Who knows? I do know one thing, though, Viggs. We need to talk about some of our sponsors here. We need to talk about Jimmy's, and I'm really glad Jimmy's is with us.
I am too. Every time I go to Cub, I'm looking at that Jimmy's right when I go in. I see the apples. I see the caramel dip. I see the sea salt caramel because I like a little bit of that extra flavor in there. And just pick up a tub or two. It's great with apples, pretzels, celery, ice cream, finger. Can't go wrong. So make sure you stop by and get some Jimmy's salad dressing and dips.
Don't ya be messing with my dressing.
And I got to admit, I may have done the finger thing a couple times, Viggs.
Well, sometimes you just want to check. You just want to check. You know, I throw it in the microwave a little bit. You know, sometimes I don't want to get an extra spoon. You know, there you go.
But also, we need to talk about Lunch Bucket Hockey, Viggs.
Yeah, I saw Lunch Bucket on Instagram this week showing off some veterans jerseys. You know, that's a couple hardworking guys who play that Friday lunchtime retiree pickup hockey. And they're coming up with ideas for lunchbuckethockey.com. If you're looking for jerseys, if you're looking for some brand that celebrates these pillars of the sport that are the grit and grind players, Lunch Bucket Hockey's for you. Check them out.
Of course, we thank Lunch Bucket Hockey and Jimmy's for sponsoring the GPL podcast. And we know what time it is. It's time for Vigo's Top 20, where your top 3 have not changed, Vigs, and they probably shouldn't because those teams just keep winning. Actually, Michigan State in there as well. Teams keep winning. They're going to be at the top of your poll.
Yeah, you know, BC is looking very impressive. You know, they probably have the hardest strength of schedule in the country, and they've achieved a lot this season already. They're probably going to be the top pairwise team once we get those rankings starting to come out and matter. But Denver, they're the champs. They've got enough players back. They're also taking care of business. Minnesota is making it hard on themselves, but they're not dropping games.
Yes. 8 straight.
Pretty good.
Hard to argue with that. And isn't Denver playing CC here soon? Is that this weekend?
It's coming up soon.
It is coming up soon, isn't it? They got to be, because they're going to be getting into league play as well. So
yeah, but it's CC and Western this weekend.
Another good matchup.
So that's a good matchup too, because I think Western is one of those teams where I'm waiting for them to take that jump from like the middle of the pack towards the top of the pack and be like a 1 or 2 seed. But I need to see them win some games.
Of course, you got Michigan in there because they've been playing much better. Maine is good. Providence has been sneaky good. They just keep winning as well, Vigs.
Yeah, it's kind of movement time of the season right now for these middle teams. You know, there were a lot of sweeps last weekend in college hockey for these teams that are in the top, 9 here. Once you get in that bottom 10 of the top 20, there are some struggles going on, and it's hard to figure out who's going to stand out of that group. Cornell had a tie with Yale with a couple bad decisions that were made, and they lost their number 1 vote in the USCHO poll this week.
Okay, someone doesn't have a backbone. You're voting for this team when they haven't played a game, then they get one little tie, and I'm giving up.
And they've got a tough weekend coming up. I think they've got Dartmouth and Harvard, probably the 2 other challengers in ECAC for them. We'll see. Quinnipiac had a bad weekend. They dropped out of here for me. They've got to earn it back. It'll be interesting to see.
Minnesota State creeping up just a little bit each week. I noticed their Vigs.
Yeah, just a little bit. They've got some impressive wins. They've got a little bit of inconsistency of their game, but they look like they could maybe be the team out of the CCHA this year. That league is going to have a hard time getting more than 1 bid, though. Just the more I look at the interconference records, CCHA is just not getting it done. So, unless Minnesota starts really taking care of business in their league and not dropping points to teams like Bemidji and St. Thomas, they're going to be on this bubble where they're going to have to win the conference tournament.
Our guy, Steve Larson, says Denver is at North Dakota. So, yeah, it's speed limit and the toughness going from Lindenwood to North Dakota, quite the jump up this weekend for Denver.
Yeah, and same probably for North Dakota going from Minnesota Duluth to Denver.
Oh,
the Bulldogs are not off to a good start.
They're not. They are definitely not. So Penn State kind of hang around. There's your Dartmouth and Harvard. Your other teams kind of sneaking in there, followed by Michigan Tech. Who's knocking on the door, Viggs? Who are you keeping an eye on to maybe break this top 20 poll for you?
You know, it's really hard for me because a lot of the teams that I was looking at, like the Unions and Quinnipiacs, are just not having good times. You know, Ohio State, do they deserve to be where they are? You know, tough losses to Michigan State for them. You know, it's hard to drop them too much, but they've got to really hang on here. It's early. It's early in the season.
It is.
Most looking forward at this point of the poll to see how Cornell, Dartmouth, and Harvard kind of pan out. And those games will be on ESPN Plus this weekend. You know, something to check out as we have a weird weekend with the Gophers playing Thursday, Saturday.
Yep.
You'll get Friday to peruse around all of college hockey if you can.
All right. Well, that looks good, Viggs. Another week of the Vigos top 20 here. Some pretty bad news came out yesterday, Viggs. We're losing a Division I program in AIC, reported by College Hockey News. Not good. Could be the first of a couple schools that may decide to do this. Some schools may even just drop it. Who knows what's going to happen, but some are thinking, you know, their excuse was, you know, financial and the way the NCAA is going. Either way, this is not good.
I think it also is just a sign of problems in higher education right now. Because I think the bigger picture for AIC is just their total enrollment for the school is not keeping up with expectations.
Yes.
And so they're having to cut programs. And D1 hockey, even on the cheap, is still almost a $2 million a year enterprise to keep going. And so AIC has made the decision that they can't keep up. And if their enrollment numbers are going to drop, they're going to have to figure out another solution. You know, we've talked about St. Cloud and their enrollment numbers as well. I don't think St. Cloud is the institution where they're going to drop hockey, but it's just another institution that's having trouble meeting enrollment numbers. And that kind of has a trickle-down effect to athletics as well.
Boy, you just hate to see it. You know, you've seen so many programs being added the last 5 to 10 years. Some programs coming back. I don't think that's going to be the case this time. I don't think you're going to see an AIC come back. It's just you know, we've gotten to 64 teams or 63 teams, and boy, I'd hate to see us keep dropping teams here, Viggs. It's just that no matter what team it is.
Yeah. You know, the one hope for college hockey is that maybe some of these teams that are like these kind of Atlantic small programs can get replaced by bigger athletic departments that can support a bigger program, maybe sell more tickets, have a better venue. I'm not sure what the path is here for college hockey. You know, the major junior stuff is just in full swing right now with all these kids committing to college programs. The player pool is there to support small programs.
Yes.
And the way the sport is structured, where you have these kids who come in at 17, 18 versus the kids who come in at 20, almost 21, creates a playing field where you can build a program a lot of different ways and be competitive. We'll just see what happens, though.
Andrew Carlson, USC, UCLA. Well, we've heard UCLA is their athletic department's not in good shape at all the last few years. One of the reasons why they wanted to come to the Big Ten and get more money. So I don't see UCLA bumping their club team up anytime soon.
No. I mean, Arizona, they have a rink there that they just basically built that's pretty nice. That would make a lot of sense. You have a rivalry then with Arizona State. You know, in the Northwest, Washington would make a lot of sense. They've got the Kraken. They've got a lot of junior hockey there, major junior hockey there. That would make a lot of sense as another market for college hockey. You'd love Nike and Phil Knight at Oregon to jump in the tank here, but they seem very reluctant to. And it's going to be hard for some programs to add a sport right now with the revenue sharing that's going to be coming up across college hockey. They've got to come up with $22 million of revenue is now also going to be an expense because it's going to be going.
And that's just it. If anything happens, Viggs, I think teams will wait or schools will wait. Let's wait 5 years to kind of see how things settle first.
Yep. Tough industry right now. What's going to happen?
So in the last week or so, a lot of people have jumped over to Blue Sky Social, Viggs. We're always taking the Twitter questions, and I thought, this week let's hit up some Blue Sky people. Not many people there yet, but just another social platform out there. And I put out a couple questions. Of course, Radio Fallness wants to be funny. Already comes back. What's Pat Micheletti like? And we wanted real questions. So we've got.
Well, I have to look down when I talk to Pat because
I have to look down because
you got to make sure. Yep. Or we sit down at a table.
But Jim from Blue Sky was saying, which goaltender do you think is playing better? I think that's a pretty good question, V's. I mean, people keep saying, Erie is not playing well. Well, Erie is undefeated.
I think when you look at Erie, obviously the game at Minnesota Duluth was a little concerning. Maybe some of the goals against St. Thomas are ones you'd like back. Soulier doesn't have as many of those kind of goals on his resume so far, but I don't really think either goalie has proven themselves to be far and away better. I think it's a pretty close battle. I think if I had to pick one right now for a big game, it would probably be Soulier, but that's basically because of his experience more than anything I'm seeing out of their games. Both goalies look very comfortable, move around a lot, play the puck a lot. I don't see a lot of weaknesses in their games right now. It's just, I think Erie is still kind of feeling out the traffic and the pace more so than Soulier.
And I also think, Bob said, I want to wait till November. Well, it's November. I just don't see him making any real changes in the first half of the season. We might not see anything really until January, if we see anything at all.
The only thing I could see would be like against Michigan State or Michigan. If one of them plays really good on the Friday, they might get a Saturday, or if one of them has a tough Saturday, the next one might flip, because we've seen Erie pretty much every Friday, I think, so far, and Soulier every Saturday. So we'll have a Thursday, Saturday this week, but, it's kind of been that routine.
Yeah.
To play the young guy first, the older guy second.
All right, going back to Blue Sky here, Vonner, who's obviously on Twitter, who's seen a lot of questions from him in the past. What's up with a populous but rather timid Icebox at 3M at Mariucci? He thinks they've been a little quiet and a little maybe not as rambunctious.
I don't know. I think the students have been pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, since the pandemic, the students at venues for Minnesota have just been phenomenal.
Way up.
So I don't have too many complaints on her. I'm sorry.
I missed the Penn State series because I was sick. So I've only been to Mariucci for the media day, and I guess it would have been the St. Thomas game. So that's the only time. So I'll be back there tomorrow. And then they're back on the road. So not many games at Mariucci so far this year, besides that full Penn State series.
Yeah, I mean, that could be part of it as well. Competition for fans and maybe just not getting into the routine yet. Children got to learn the routines and the chants and the animosity that they can show to visiting teams. And I think it's helpful for Minnesota to kind of have a backloaded hockey schedule. It allows football to kind of to play out their season. There's just one more game with the Penn State. I know that Gopher Athletics is trying to do buy one, get ones to sell out that game. I know they're also doing buy one, get ones for tomorrow for the Bemidji State game. So they're trying to keep a good atmosphere there.
They definitely are. And the speed limit and everything's going to change those 2 first weekends in December when the Michigan teams are in town back to back. I know you've been anticipating that for a while too. It's like, let's wait and see how good this team is when those 2 teams come in back to back.
it's hard not want to hurry up that weekend, but you can't do that. And
Nope.
the positive for this team is they're not doing that. They're doing the work to get there. Mason Evers talked about it in the Wisconsin series. We did have a little bit of feeling out period on Friday. We got to stop doing that. We've been doing that in the past. Did against Penn State. Did it a little bit with St. Thomas. That's us growing as a team and being hard right from the start.
All right. Well, I just kind of wanted to mention Blue Skies since it was so new and we took a couple questions. Maybe we'll keep doing that in the future. Both Vigs and I are on there. Just give it a quick search for us. And it's not hard to find us. So, but one thing we need to talk about again here, Vigs, is our sponsors. And I'm going right to Cub Foods.
I mean, Cubs just got everything. They've got stores all around the metro, and they are investing in the Twin Cities. They are local Minnesota. They sponsor the Pull Tab Sports Studio. They're on PJ Flex headset. They sponsor a lot of Gopher athletic stuff. If you're looking for a Gopher promo like the Red Baron stuff, Cub Foods is the place for you. If you're getting that one last tailgate in, make sure you head there to grab your hamburgers. Those pub burgers are great. Hot dogs, brats, chips, veggie platters, cold cuts. And if you need a couple drinks for your party, a lot of them now have wine and spirits attached.
Definitely. And now we have a new sponsor, Vig, State 1981, a book that's available on Amazon now.
Yeah, I mean, the high school season just kicked off this week. They're all dreaming about getting to excel and starting a dynasty. And this is one that looks at 35 years of Minnesota State hockey tournament history, written from the unique perspective of the cursed South St. Paul Packers in their 21st tournament appearance as they strive for their first ever championship. So check out this book. It's on Amazon. It's about hockey. It's about Minnesota. Support them.
That's kind of a unique thing, Viggs, just from the viewpoint of a Packer guy, because we know they are the most cursed team in the state tournament.
I mean, they are up there. They're right there with White Bear Lake probably in the struggles they've had. They've had some really great teams and great players come through, but just no luck.
At least they've won some games. Well, we know White Bear Lake, maybe not so much.
Yeah, so that'll be fun to check out. I'll look into that.
Definitely have to check it out. Home and home with Bemidji State this weekend. Well, tomorrow and Saturday, Vigs. That means you get one of the Saratori brothers, and this time it's Tom Saratori, coach coming in. People might not know, but he might not be as public with his personality as Frank, but when you talk to him behind the scenes, they are a lot alike.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. You ask Bob about these two guys. And he's like, well, Frank likes a microphone. He likes a crowd. Tom probably likes the back of a dive bar. And Bob was telling a story back at hockey camp. He was playing in between with Tom, and he got a king 2 on in between. And I don't know if you've ever played in between, but you have a deck of cards or you've got a pot, and you bet that the next card is going to be between the two. And so a king and a 2, that's about as good as you can get. You get an ace and, a 2, that would be pretty good. Well, anyway, Bob bets the pot. King comes out. So he's got to pay double pot.
Oh, no.
And he doesn't have the money. And so I guess what happened is he agreed to work Tom's last shift of hockey camp. And Tom got to go home early. And Bob had to give him the money. Bob says that's about when I stopped gambling. So
that's a great story. That's a great story, and just par for the course for the Saratori brothers. It really is.
Mm-hmm. So they're always fun to see. Like, I always try to grab them at the Frozen Four and catch up. I've talked to Tom and Frank a couple times for stories I've done for USCHO. They're just a hoot. So, one thing with Bemidji State, you're going to get a tough physical team. He recruits players who want to be there, want to play that style and embrace it. He's like, when you're 20 years old and you're playing in the Null and you're bussing everywhere and you got ice packs and cold pizza, that shows how much you love hockey. And the guys that love that environment and thrive in that are guys we want at Bemidji.
Oh, Darren Bakken telling us we leave White Bear Lake alone. I'm not saying something that's not true. Sorry, not sorry, Darren. That's just kind of the way it is. So Paulson out, Falloon out, Thomas out. I know. So Middlestead, had been kind of trading off and on with Falloon these games. So he'll John Middlestead, I should say. We're going to see kind of the standard layout we've been seeing the last couple of games, especially on Saturday. Or anyone else going to sneak in there?
Yeah, I was just going to look at my notes. I had Wood, Clark, Kurth still together. Zemer, Moore with Snuggerud, Lamb, Huglin, Hendrickson, Michael, Middleset, Nevers. And then I saw Begley skating with the forwards. So I think if they're looking for a guy, or maybe they do want to put someone else in there, Begley has been skating with the forwards for a little bit.
Very interesting there. Because I had noticed the Clark Wood Kurth line had been broken up. Was it Saturday last week? I think it was the Saturday game. When they started
I think that was just kind of jumbling with the center issues they're having. I know Jimmy Clark's had some issues. Jimmy Clark's had some issues with health lately that he's been dealing with. That's hampering him a little bit for ice time. So that's one other thing to watch.
Darren Bakken asking Rude, is Rude going to play?
He's the 7th D right now. It's hard to know what they'll do with their lineup. I think they do apparently favor Begley over him right now. Putting him in there, giving him some shifts in the last series with Penn State and here and there, and I think they're trying to get him ready so he could fill in at forward or D at this point, because they're pretty comfortable with what they've seen on D. They just want him to be ready for forward. One thing about the power play is stepping into Paulson's spot. I saw Oliver Moore. So that's
gosh, he needs to get some goals there, Viggs.
He said it's like he's got a hole in his stick. He's got a hole in his stick, I think, because he's got one of those blades, with the gap in the middle for speed. He's got to get the full blade on those. He's had a bunch of those on the back door, especially from Luke Middlestead. I think Luke Middlestead has probably given him 4 grade A's on the power play. Maybe if it's coming from Snuggerud or Wood or Rinzel, maybe he'll find the blade. We'll see.
Boy, that's tough. Because there was a video put out late this afternoon with Kurth, Rinzel, and Luke Middlestead. And if you haven't seen it, go look for it on the Twitter machine and the social media networks. It's really good. Those guys can't talk enough about the guys who don't play and how they're just there every week. Guys like Rude, guys like the goaltender Weiss. I mean, we got all these guys. They love these guys. I could see sometimes in the past, players are going like, these guys don't want to ever play, but these guys are really part of the team, even though they don't see the ice so much. Viggs.
Well, I think they just embrace their roles. Like, I see a lot of their special team stuff on Wednesday, and those guys are jumping in there as the scout PK, giving them a look, and they're competing hard, and they're trying to show that they could step in if they get the chance. And maybe a weekend like this is one where they get some opportunities to play a little bit. I think Begley's the guy. He can play 7th D or he can play 13th forward, so it makes sense to dress him as that guy. It'll be fun to see if Michael gets a shot and if he gets some playing time, because it was kind of a question mark if he'd be back this year.
Yes.
After coming from St. John's and Alabama Huntsville, he's been in school a while. Sometimes those guys are ready to move on with their lives and do certain things, but he came back for another year. Everyone likes him, like you said. So this would be a good opportunity for him.
And I
go ahead.
I
was going to say one thing on the power play with Moore shifting in to the Paulson spot. I see Zemer slipping in to Moore's spot on that other power play group. So that's kind of what I'm expecting to see.
You mentioned Nick Michael there, and from what I know, I believe that's him, kind of the little giggly voice in the background on the Scott Slarks video. So good for him. Good for him. He was almost in the lineup the other, last weekend, but a lot of people were questioning that first. Why do you have a couple extra players? Well, a lot of times, coach doesn't know. Coach, like, God, I need to have these guys on the list. And if one needs to be a scratch later on, they're a scratch because we got to get the starting lineups out. It's got to be produced. Someone's got to put it together. So that's why you'd see them on this, the lineup list that's put out 2 hours before the game, because that's done even before that. So I know.
Well, I think based on what Motzko said, Clark is dealing with some upper body tightness and just wasn't sure if he was going to be able to go on Friday, and decided to tough it out. Felt much better on Saturday, apparently, but just stuff to watch.
So what happens this weekend, Viggs? Like you said, kind of an all odd Thursday, Saturday series. I don't mind it because, Friday night, I'll probably be watching other hockey, maybe bring my laptop out and have a nice fire. It's supposed to be a nice evening. But what's going to happen?
Well, I think this is a game Minnesota's been preparing for the last couple of weeks. Mason Nevers was talking about what Ben Gordon's been promoting Bemidji State as, and he's like, they're kind of like Notre Dame, Penn State. They're going to be physical, they're going to be chippy, they're going to be aggressive, they're not going to give you much, so you're going to have to take what you can get, and you're going to have to get in transition when you have chances. So that's one of the things for Minnesota is you can't be swinging and hoping. When you get those chances, you have to get going fast, because Bemidji will back pressure you, so you can't let them catch you. And I think in some of the series where Minnesota's gotten away in transition, it's because that back pressure hasn't been there. You look at the St. Thomas game, the Minnesota Duluth game, the Air Force game, there wasn't a lot of pressure, so they could slow down the rush and hold on to pucks longer and find that late guy coming in. I don't think you're going to see that against Bemidji State. I think you're going to have to see rush chances that are direct and fast.
No blue line turnovers.
That hasn't been a problem with this team really very much.
And when it has been, they've covered well. They've gotten back. They busted their butt. Oops, let's get back. So, like you showed me that like 5 or 6 years ago now, and I'm always looking for it. And when it happens, I'm like, ooh, oh, wait a minute. They're covering. So that's definitely a positive for when it does go wrong.
Yeah, you just can't get to the point where you're too cautious covering, especially at a game like Bemidji State, where there probably won't be as many scoring chances as the Gophers are used to, because that's just what Bemidji has to do to try to get a win out of this weekend, is they've got to close it down. I do worry with all the injuries and kind of the shakeup. This is going to be a tough matchup for Minnesota. It's hard to just like come right out and say, yeah, 6 points, no problem for a series like this, especially for a team like Minnesota. They haven't really had a night where they haven't come through, and one of those is coming at some point.
True. So are you not predicting a sweep? You thinking maybe Bemidji gets them in overtime, or maybe a split type of thing?
I think we see overtime, and I think we see the Gophers win a game in overtime again. I think that 3-on-3 for this group is really a positive for them if they get there. But I do think one of these games is going to go to overtime. So not all 6 points in the pairwise.
Mythical 6 points.
The mythical 6 points. It's easier to talk about points rather than 166% of a win.
Can't disagree.
Especially with the home and home. The home and home, there's a bonus there too. It's complicated.
Why did they make it so hard, Viggs? Why did they make it so hard?
Because they want to standardize the 3-on-3. Jude. That's what
they do. I know, but I'm just saying. Bring back the WCHA.
Isn't this a WCHA game, kind of, essentially? Wasn't Bemidji in there for a couple years?
Yeah, so it'll be packed.
Yeah. It'll be packed
for
both
on
games.
Thursday. WCHA, Minnesota team.
But I think we get the pregame and postgame, though, on local TV.
We do.
you can see Pat Nicoletti and Jim Rich.
We do get to see that.
So
It
that'll
will
be
be
good.
fun.
I will.
I think it's going to be a closer game in Bemidji. I think the home game tomorrow night, it's a 3 or 4 goal game. I don't know. It's been a little while since we've seen that. They've had a lot of close games lately. I think they're ready to kind of break out for at least one of those games and then kind of snap back maybe on Saturday evening. So just my thought. Anything else, Viggs? Or are you saving things for overtime?
Well, I will not be at the building this weekend or Thursday. I'm going to be coaching my own deal. Little news update on Minneapolis Park Board and Rec drama. We did get our rink back in Wyndham Park, so that was a big win for our community. Just gave us a little bit of faith in local government where you can talk to your representatives and speak respectfully and with some heart, and you can get things done.
I was so excited
happy to see that.
I was so excited. You post on Facebook and you post on Twitter. I'm so happy to see that got resolved, and you're going to have ice for your team and for your family this year.
Yeah, it's great for the community. It's such a busy rink. Would have been a shame to see it go away.
Yes.
Having Mike Snee from Minnesota Wild come to the park board meeting was fun. He's in this community engagement role with them now after spending so much time in College Hockey Inc. I'm encouraged at the hints of things that he's talking about happening in the state. I do think communities need to start looking at covered refrigerated rinks as an option, or when they do renovations to their rinks, they should be thinking about, can we extend our refrigeration to an outdoor rink at the same location? I just think we
similar to like
rethink.
a St. Louis Park type of thing. And I think
similar to St. Louis Park. Coon Rapids has one that's like that. There's a bunch of rinks that are starting to do that. So I think it's a good way to keep up the youth hockey and grow the game, because ultimately a lot of these players start somewhere, and you never know. I'm a big believer in that long-term athlete development.
Yes.
Keep them playing as long as you can.
Well, I'm really glad your team was successful and you were successful and the community was successful. Did they keep all the rinks?
They did not keep all the rinks.
Oh.
So they have some budget issues in the parks because of inflation and other things. But hopefully long term they can make a plan to keep the hockey rinks going.
Better than losing all the rinks they wanted to lose. So that's positive either way. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us, V's. Unless you've got anything else. Ending on a very happy note. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, it's great. Looking forward to a big weekend of hockey. I'm probably going to be a rink every day here going forward until Monday.
Lucky. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the GPL podcast. We'll be back next week when Mike Carmen joins us. He's got this new podcast going, and we'll talk about that, and we'll preview the Notre Dame series. For those of you watching live, stay tuned for some overtime. For the rest of you, we'll catch you next week on the GPL podcast.